The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, Ph.D. Welcome. Once again, my name is Michael Kane. I am the founder of Teachers for Choice. Today, we're going to be talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is being accused of lies about fetal cells and vaccines plus, and we're going to be discussing that with the legendary Dr. Brian Hooker. Plus, Sujata Gibson will be coming on after that with a New York legal update. A lot of you know I'm a fired New York City teacher who didn't get the COVID shot. Multiple cases, federal cases, state cases, appeals, updates. We're going to be going through all of that today with Sujata. And statute of limitations. If you had lost your job over the COVID shot and you haven't sued yet, where are you at? Do you need to get a legal claim in? We'll go through all of that. Also, after that, we're going to have two new People's Studies reports, one on vaccine injury and one on the unfortunate reality of death that can be caused and does happen from vaccines. But first, let's go through the news. If you are in New York, May 14th next week, we are going back to Albany, restore and reclaim our jobs, our exemptions, our rights. An all-star lineup here: Mary Holland, Naomi Wolf, myself, John Gilmore, Shannon Joy, Bobby Hancock, Sophie Medina, on it, Tremel Thompson, on and on and on. So many great people are going to be speaking. Make sure that you get to that event. All updates for that you can get at teachersforchoice.org. Next Tuesday, it looks like Naomi Wolf will be coming on CHD TV the day before the rally to get everybody rallied up and prepped for what we need to do at the Capitol in Albany. Very interesting, this Friday, me and 500 of my closest friends, who are also fired workers, we sent a letter to Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon is the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She's only had the job a week or two. Well, we sent her a letter saying our civil rights were violated. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Harmeet Dillon came out just a week or so ago saying forced vaccine mandates for adults and kids is an ongoing civil rights crisis. So shout out to Harmeet Dillon for saying that. One of the best picks of the Trump administration since Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in my opinion. So we'll give you updates if we get any response from Assistant Attorney General Dillon. I hope that we do. In New York City, the Republican minority leader is Joanne Ariola, and she is one of our biggest supporters. She just tweeted out, statement on progress towards getting employees forced to leave the city service due to COVID-19 vaccine mandates back to work. Let's show the full letter here that Ariola put out. Recently, I've had some very productive conversations with the administration, including the first deputy mayor, about putting a plan into place to return all workers separated from city service due to the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. I stress that these workers must not be required to sign a waiver of their civil service rights in order to return to city service so that they may continue pursuing lawsuits for back pay and credit for the years of service they lost. I believe these workers are owed this compensation. Let's pull that letter down. So that's a good sign. There are conversations behind the scenes with the mayor's office about reinstating fired, unvaccinated workers. That doesn't mean it's about to happen, but it means the most powerful Republican in city council is making public statements about this. That is certainly a good sign. Oh, and one other piece of news before we bring on Brian Hooker. For those who follow New York City teacher politics, Michael Mulgrew was the guy who fired us. ABC, which stands for A Better Contract, is a slate running against Mulgrew in their election right now. So anyone who works for the UFT in New York City schools, you're going to be getting a yellow envelope about an election that's happening. This slate just updated their union democracy position. Let's show that. This is very interesting. Union democracy. A better contract, ABC slate, will demand real collective bargaining before any policy that could impact job security, working conditions, or member rights is implemented. Now, that is critical for fired unvaccinated workers. Let's go to the next one. Transparent bargaining. All major decisions that affect our working lives, health, safety, staffing, benefits, evaluations must be brought to the table through open bargaining with member involvement. No more closed door deals that catch us off guard. A reckoning with pandemic era decisions. The way decisions were made during the COVID crisis about school reopening, remote work mandates, termination, and health benefits set precedents that still shape our union today. We must take a hard, honest look at how those choices were made, who was left out, and what lessons we must carry forward to protect members more effectively in the future. And then, depending due process, I'll just read the bold part. Ensure that all members receive real representation, not abandonment. We were abandoned. Teachers for Choice members were abandoned. Unvaccinated educators were abandoned. The ABC slate is the only one speaking to this. So if you're in New York City schools right now, you need to talk to all the UFT members, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, nurses, counselors, and let them know about this, because nobody else is talking about this except for the ABC slate. And with that, I'm going to bring on my first guest right now, the Chief Scientific Officer for Children's Health Defense, Dr. Brian Hooker. Dr. Hooker, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to see you. Love the shirt. So good.
Thank you so much. It's always great to see you. It's been a long time since we've been in person together. I hope one day soon we're gonna run into each other again.
We got to do it. We got to do it.
So let's get into this. There's headlines Reuters put out there that U.S. Health Secretary Kennedy revives misleading claims of fetal debris in measles shots. And then we have even more sensational headlines. I don't know what Tag 24 is, but they say RFK goes full anti-vax conspiracy with bizarre measles fetus debris rambling. Dr. Hooker, is this bizarre conspiracy rambling? Talk to us about this, please.
No, just like normal, Secretary Kennedy is telling the truth here. There are fetal remains in the MMR vaccine. The MMR vaccine that is produced by Merck and the MMR vaccine that is produced by GlaxoSmithKline is produced. The rubella portion of the vaccine is produced using two different types of fetal cell lines. These fetal cell lines are called WI38. WI stands for the Wistar Institute, which was the one that derived the cell tissue from the abortions. And then the other one is MRC, which is the Medical Research Council cell line number 5. And that was developed by the UK government. And so these were elective abortions that were done back in the 1960s and 70s. It wasn't just 2 abortions. It was actually, if you look at the count of cell lines, there were 38 cell lines that were developed for the Wistar Institute, and at least 5 cell lines that were developed for the Medical Research Council. So these were multiple abortions, and you would expect by definition and by regulation up to 10 nanograms of DNA from these fetal cell lines in each one of these vaccine vials.
So one of the reasons this has come up is that there are people who have religious objections to
Correct.
the MMR vaccine, and people are saying they are crazy to have those objections. Some people have religious exceptions. There's various reasons, but some people have it because they are opposed to abortion on religious grounds. Do you think that makes sense, or do you think that is anti-vaccine conspiracy theory for these people to have that belief?
Well, if you are not supporting products that are made, by with ingredients from the abortion industry, then that would include these vaccines, and that includes specifically the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, the hepatitis A vaccine, and the varicella vaccine. All are derived and all are produced using aborted fetal cell lines. And so, if you are opposed to abortion, the folks that I know that are pro-life, it doesn't matter how many abortions there, have been conducted. It could be one abortion, it could be a million abortions. They are opposed to abortion, and by definition, these products are derived from aborted fetal tissue.
And so I was a little surprised to find somebody who normally does not agree with you, Dr. Hooker, agrees
Right.
with you almost 100% on this, and that would be Dr. Paul Offit. Let's roll that clip of Dr. Offit.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And one issue, and it tends to be a little contentious, is are fetal cells used to make vaccines? The answer is yes. There were 2 elective abortions that were performed in the early 1960s, one in Sweden, one in England. Those cells that were obtained from those elective abortions have been used to make several vaccines. They've been used to make the hepatitis A vaccine, the chickenpox vaccine, the rubella or German measles vaccines, one of the rabies vaccines. Though it's the same cells that were obtained in the early 1960s, so no new therapeutic or elective abortions have been performed since then for the purpose of making vaccines. But the answer to the question, is there residual or very small quantities of trace DNA from those original abortions in the vaccines that I just mentioned? The answer is yes.
So there you go. Now Paul Offit doesn't tend to sign off on the scientific opinions and facts that you place forth. But
Right.
there it is. It seems like he said almost identical to what you just said to us.
Exactly. There's no way around it. And aborted fetal DNA is in these products. And so, we know that the FDA standard for a vaccine vial is 10 micrograms of exogenous. This would be, what would be considered foreign DNA. In this case, it would be foreign human DNA. And so, it's definitely in there. I mean, no matter how you slice it, these did come from abortions. And, again, there's so many weasel words that are used to calm this down. And I think that in this instance, when the media has these, salacious headlines about Secretary Kennedy and trying to refute what he said. What he said was absolutely positively correct. Another way of describing fetal products or the remains of fetal products would be fetal debris or fetus debris. And that is, he was fully correct in what he said. If anything, the media is lying, peddling this fear porn about Secretary Kennedy and the things that he says. I mean, we have a Secretary of HHS right now that tells us the truth, and yet the mainstream media then penalizes him for it because, they they evidently do not know what the truth is in this instance.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I also want to push back on this idea or notion that it's only 1 or 2 fetuses. It was only 1 or 2 fetuses that were ultimately picked.
Correct.
That the cell line that they picked from those fetuses ended up being used. But Aaron Siri's done amazing work on this, where he's deposed Dr. Stanley Plotkin, Paul Offit's mentor, where he's gone into one clinical trial they did on vaccines where 74 fetuses were used because they were looking for the correct fetus, the best one and the best body part from the fetus to thus develop the cell line from. So one could even argue that a large majority of the vaccine industry is dependent upon experimentation with multiple fetuses. Do you care to comment on that, Dr. Hooker?
It is done all the time. And these happen to be older cell lines because these products have been in production for a long period of time. But to say, Dr. Offit is incorrect in saying that these were the result of 2 abortions. There are multiple abortions, like you said, Michael, that are done during clinical trials and done during the production phase in order to get the best titers of the viruses that are being produced by these fetal cells. And there's no way around it. There are multiple abortions that are done in the vaccine industry right now. There are multiple abortions that have been done in the vaccine industry for vaccines that are currently under production. They're also used for testing of vaccines while they're in clinical studies, so it's not just in the production phase. And so, it's an ongoing issue, and for so long we have not heard the truth about this and not heard the truth about, the integral link between the vaccine industry and the abortion industry. But, I'm glad, Michael, that we're publicizing it right now. It needs to be told. And again, we have a secretary of HHS that will tell us the truth about these things. And then consumers, he's not telling us not to vaccinate. He's just putting everything out on the table so we can make informed choices.
That's exactly right. That's exactly correct. We don't need to be going in any direction but the truth. And thank God we have somebody heading HHS right now that is steering the ship that way. Dr. Hooker, thank you so much for coming on and for clearing the air and for making sure that our audience has all of the facts. I look forward to having you on again sometime very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Always great to see you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. The amazing Dr. Brian Hooker, Chief Scientific Officer of Children's Health Defense. And now we are going to bring on my attorney, an attorney who is just one of the most seasoned and knowledgeable in the field of religious and medical freedom in New York, for an update on what is happening with all of the cases dealing with workers fired over vaccine mandates. Sujata Gibson. Ms. Gibson, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Hi, Michael. It's so great to be here with you.
So what I recently I've been working very closely with you, and all of a sudden there's like half a dozen cases for fired unvaccinated workers, teachers, even medical professionals and others that no one is actually aware of. So I thought it was a great time to get you on to talk about that, update on some of the old cases as well too. I don't want to spend too much time on this because basically the answer is they're on appeal. But some of the big cases we've had, especially for teachers, was Kane versus de Blasio on the federal level, as well as DeCapua versus the city of New York. The DeCapua case actually won, but the city appealed, and the Kane case is on appeal in the federal courts. Can you just briefly let people know where those cases stand currently today?
Sure, and I think it's important. Kane was a partial win, a partial loss, right? The second department, this was a group of teachers, you being one of them, and the second department held that the original process was unconstitutional that you all had for religious accommodation review. And so the people that didn't go through that, or at least one of the people that didn't go through that, they held, still had First Amendment claims because they did go through that, but never got an appeal with the citywide panel. She still has a claim. But the people who got the citywide panel, the court said the citywide panel kind of fixed the problem. Now, I don't think that they're right. That's not my understanding of how the constitutional law works on once you've faced religious discrimination. It would be a terrible way to go forward in terms of religious discrimination, because employers could just adopt a totally discriminatory policy and then say, hey, we gave it fresh review, everything's fine, we would have made the same decision anyway. And it gives them a loophole. So that is on appeal. Only one of the people who went through the citywide panel still has her case alive. That's Heather Clark. And they're saying that in her case, because it wasn't as clear that there was undue hardship as the citywide panel claimed there was for everybody, she still has a First Amendment claim. So that's on appeal. Well, it's going to be on appeal. Actually, we have some exciting news about that. It looks like ADF is going to be bringing a Supreme Court cert petition. And
Wow.
so we will be joining in on it. CHD will be joining in on it. And all of us attorneys will be helping, but ADF is going to be leading the way on that.
Wow, Sujata, that's kind of breaking news here. Do you have any idea what the timeline on that looks like, or is it unclear right now?
I will report back on the timeline. It'll take a little while.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, I'll have more news soon. But I think that is really the right choice. You know, ADF is pretty legendary in terms of their Supreme Court success rate and also their care with these issues. And they have carefully parsed this case and very much agree that it would be an important one for the Supreme Court to take up. So hopefully the Supreme Court agrees and does take it up, because what happened in New York City to teachers is frankly shocking. And the fact that they don't have relief under the Constitution is upsetting.
You know, Sujata, at the beginning of the show, I had talked about a letter that 500 of my closest friends and fired workers in New York City wrote to Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon now heads the Civil Rights Division over at DOJ. Harmeet Dillon was the counsel that, with ADF, beat the OSHA vaccine mandate that Biden brought in on a federal level. And she too did that alongside Alliance Defending Freedom, just as Children's Health Defense is now working with Alliance Defending Freedom in the Kane versus de Blasio case. So hopefully those are good omens. Hopefully that speaks well to how the Supreme Court will take a look at this, hopefully.
It's not always clear what cases they take. If they don't
Right.
take it, that doesn't mean it's over. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about here. That case only brought First Amendment claims and constitutional claims. But there are other claims available to fired city workers, including teachers. And those are Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and then the New York State and New York City Human Rights Law. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about statute of limitations for people so that they know. You know, I brought it up before, but it doesn't always get, you know, not everybody sees it. So most of these claims, you only have 3 years to bring them. Not the Title VII, we'll put that aside for a second, but the constitutional claims and the New York State claims, you only have 3 years to bring them, sometimes less. And for a lot of people, that statute of limitations has passed. There are still city workers who did not get their final decision or get fired until later in 2022. So there are still some of you out there who are within the statute of limitations.
Right.
And I would highly recommend, if you're one of those people, that you reach out to a lawyer. You can reach out to me, you can reach out to another lawyer, but you should talk to somebody, because you may want to consider bringing your own case. But for those of you who are not within the statute of limitations anymore, we have sort of a backup plan that we've brought, which is, it's not as good as having your own case because there are some pitfalls, but there's case law that says that if there is a class action lawsuit still pending and you're one of the proposed class members, then until that class action is denied, the certification of a class is denied, your statute of limitations is tolled. So let's say your statute of limitations ran out in February or March of this year. That would mean you would still have the ability to bring a lawsuit, depending on federal or state law. You would be able to wait until a decision is made, and then you'd have a little bit more time afterwards. So we do have.
Sujata, on that point, what would be required is in the new proposed class action, that class action is granted in order for that to happen?
No, if it's granted, then that's great. You would be eligible to be part of the class, or you could then decide, I don't like the way the class is going, I want to file my own lawsuit. But if it's denied, you still would have the right then to file your own lawsuit within a short period of time. And so So, there are some pitfalls with this line of cases. It's,
Oh.
you lawyer figuring out if you'd rather, bring your own case and be sure that you're a named plaintiff somewhere rather than taking your chance with this, what we call the American pipe tolling rule. But it is a good option, for those who weren't able to file a lawsuit, who don't have, because it does cost money, it is difficult to do. This is kind of a backup plan that hopefully will be able to help people if
Right.
we're able to
So
go forward.
Sujata, I was put on leave without pay in September or October of 2021. I was fired in February of 2022. I believe there were a lot of teachers that were fired in that time. And then if you bring in firefighters and sanitation workers and police, I think they are also into the 2022 range. For me, it is over. The 3 years would be over. Hypothetically, if I had not filed a case, it's over as of February 2025. Is that correct?
It's a little complicated because, and this is where you might want to talk to a lawyer, but let me talk about that scenario. So yes, 3 years, it wouldn't be from necessarily your termination date. And this is where all the fights happen in court. This is why you always want to be early. It definitely wouldn't have been from your fall leave without pay decision because there was an appeal after that. So it's really from the date of a final determination. Some courts will view that as the date you were fired. Some courts will view that as the date you got your final appeal decision. And so for some people also, there's an even more complicating factor, which is that they were fired before getting a final appeal determination. Technically, that should be the date you're fired is when it kind of becomes final and binding, even if you haven't gotten a decision. But courts go different ways. So it's a little bit complicated, but yes, you'd probably be outside the 3 years. Although for teachers, there's kind of an additional thing that happened, and we haven't really seen too many cases in court about this, but the DOE opened the door to further liability by offering everybody their job back in August of 2022 if they would go get vaccinated. And remember, August of 2022, they knew for sure that the vaccine didn't stop transmission. The CDC even, blatantly had something out about how you can't treat workers differently based on vaccine status because both can, spread COVID at equal rates and so forth. So by then they knew that, and they knew all of you needed religious accommodation because you had applied before. So under the law, if an employee or a potential employee is known to need accommodation, an employer needs to try to accommodate them. So it's, it sort of opens up another window of liability.
So overall, what it sounds like to me is people out there, you need a consultation with an attorney. That's what you need because everything's going to be different. All the set of facts are different. And you're going to need at least an hour to sit down with some, some of the people I would say in New York, Sujata Gibson, Jimmy Wagner, Chad LaViglia, Christina Martinez. These are like the core people that I've seen that know what they're doing and working really well. Getting a consultation with them now could be critical because each month that's passing is where these details are going to reach a definitive no for a number of people as every month continues to pass. So if you can, consultations aren't a ton of money, but they are a little bit of money. You really should look into doing that. Sujata, could you also talk a little bit about the new cases that you have that could help to cover people and help to extend the clock potentially as these cases move forward?
Sure. So there's the OG case, New Yorkers for Religious Liberty v. City of New York. That's still going. We have a conference on that today. And that one has had a pending class action since 2021, and it applies to anyone who works for the city, who worked for the city, and was denied religious accommodation. The next case is Tunnel v. City of New York. That is a newer case, and it might be consolidated, we'll see, but it's a case of proposed class action based on Title VII violations as well as constitutional violations. And that's really for city workers, not DOE employees. but other municipal workers who were denied religious accommodation. And then there are 3 cases for former DOE employees. One is Zapantis, and that case is a proposed class action on behalf of people who went through the citywide panel process and got a determination or didn't, but they were told they had a citywide panel review. And the other one is a proposed class action under the lead case of Hogan, but there are also 2 other cases that are going to be hopefully consolidated, Clark and Collins. And those are for DOE employees who never got a citywide panel review. And there are lots of cases. It's really shocking when you start to hear all the stories, how shoddy this whole process was.
Oh, yeah.
The way that the city kind of decided who was going to get this fresh review after they were caught with an unconstitutional policy and who wasn't, was whether people had appealed. But many people tried to appeal their original determination, even though the process was so blatantly unconstitutional, only to find that the system was crashing. They were writing to everybody. They were saying, help me, and nobody would help them. Nobody would let them submit an appeal. They only had 24 hours. And the criteria were blatantly unconstitutional. So we've really learned a lot since 2021 about all of the misdeeds that went on.
Yeah, it's really really eye-opening and really crazy to see what New York City did in terms of just blatant violations of religious liberty, of constitutional law, of Title VII. But it's heartening to hear. We've been in this battle a long time. A lot of people are like losing heart on this, and they are, in a bad space about it. But it's good to hear that this is continuing. And you actually are going to be coming to Albany on May 14th, and you're going to be speaking about this as well as other lawsuits that relate to the bills we're trying to pass, to the human rights agenda as well, too. Hey, Lou, actually, maybe we could just scroll through the human rights agenda real quick. We have 5 major bills that we are supporting: the Let Us Work Act to bring back fired unvaccinated workers, which speak to all these cases; restoring the religious exemption to vaccine mandates to attend schools for kids; the Education for All Act to return physicians' authority to write medical exemptions. That is also something that Sujata Gibson is fighting on in a major way as well, too. And we have 2 other acts, one that would require a parent to be present whenever there is a vaccine given, as well as giving people the right to sue any government agency if they required you to get a vaccine, which is a novel way around the federal law that blocks lawsuits against the manufacturers. So this is, and you see the co-sponsors: MAHA Alliance, Autism Action Network, Children's Health Defense, and Teachers for Choice. So Sujata, that's another leg of this battle too, the legislative battle, the battle up in Albany as well too. Why don't you speak to that just a little bit?
I mean, every single one of those are incredibly important. And for every single one, I have a tragic lawsuit and story about why it's so important. Let's take the last one. Christina Martinez and I are representing right now a former firefighter who took the shot, had a really bad anaphylactic reaction that was documented by the FDNY doctors. He was in the ER multiple times. He was saying, I don't want to get the second one. I don't think it's safe. And they said, sorry, you have to get it, because unless you can show us a lab test showing that you're allergic to one of the components of this vaccine, anaphylaxis alone is not enough. And he went to an allergist, and the allergist said, well, we can't do a lab test because you're on steroids and other medications, and we can't actually test you when you're on those medications. And the FDNY didn't really care, and they just let him take the second shot, and now he's injured for life. And they recognized it. He tried to get enhanced disability. The FDNY has a special program where if you were injured on the job in a workplace related incident, then you can get this enhanced pension and disability. And unfortunately, the judge said it's very clear that he was injured by the workplace requirement, and everybody agreed on that. But they said it's not an accident. Taking a vaccine isn't an accident, so it didn't qualify for. So he's trying to get by on nothing. He's in his 30s. He has kids. He can't even pick up his kids. He can't, his family is suffering. They're behind on all their bills. They're probably going to lose their house. And who's he going to sue? And now we're fighting the case, and they're saying, well, he doesn't qualify. Before he took the shot, he didn't qualify as someone who has a disability, so he can't get protection under the statutes, because an allergy, they're saying it wasn't disabling his life until he was injured by the COVID vaccine.
It's just a despicable shell game that they're playing with someone's life. That fireman is O'Brien Pastrana. I know him well. He's been on this show. He's been featured in the New York Post. He's come up to Albany often and to City Hall, despite how difficult it is for him to make long trips and to do this. It's just, and then also, we don't have time for this so much, Sujata, but then there's also medical exemptions. Kids kicked out of school that were in school with medical exemptions, that doctors are saying 4, 5, 6, 7 doctors don't vaccinate this kid. And the school says, we don't care. And they're kicked out of school. And we have a bill to try to address that as well, too. Unfortunately, Sujata, we are out of time right now. We don't have time to go into more on this. If people do want a legal consultation, I would recommend go to gibsonfirm.law. That's on the screen under Sujata right now. See if you could set up a consultation with her. And there are other attorneys. You can reach out to me too as well. There's other attorneys that I know we could recommend for you to as the clock starts to wind down, as we're starting to look at that in this long game phase of the fight that we are now in, some 4 years out.
I just want to say one really quick thing, which
Sure.
is that, I've been meeting with some senators and, assembly people in New York, and a lot of it is about what their priorities are. And when they say about the medical exemption bill, for example, it's just, they're kind of indicating it may just not be a priority for them. They agree it's really important, but it's just not their priority. We need to make it a priority. So if there's any way you can come on the 14th, every one of us that shows up increases how likely this will become a priority for these lawmakers. So it's not just about justice. It's not just about getting them on their side, our side. We have to show them that we're there and we care and we vote.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. It is the squeaky wheel that gets the oil and gets attention. May 14th, we are up in Albany. We need hundreds of people to join us. Get all that information at teachersforchoice.org. Sujata, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you today. Thank you for all the information.
Thank you. It was great to be here with you.
Excellent.
Bye.
Don't go anywhere, everybody. Coming up now, we have 2 people stories. One about vaccine injury and one about the very unfortunate reality about vaccines leading to death. Stick around for that now.
I can't cry every day for what might have been. I can't cry every day for what I feel responsible that I allowed to happen. I can't cry every day for, where he might have been. It's constant research that you're always doing to find that one thing that might make a difference in his life, or to change things for him or for other people. And that's really what it all has become about, is how can we help other people with Gavin's story.
David and Nancy Flynn, thank you for being here. This is about your child, your newborn son. You have 2 children. What is the name of the child that was injured?
Gavin.
Okay. How old is Gavin today?
Gavin is 18 and a half today.
All right. Take us back to when you were pregnant with Gavin and talk us through whether you both had a conversation about vaccines at all.
Oh, okay. Well, the pregnancy was normal up until it wasn't. Gavin was born at 26 weeks. I had preeclampsia, went into HELP syndrome, so they had to take him or lose us both. So he was born June 1st, 2006. And he was in the NICU for several months. And then when he was about 2 months old, the doctors asked me, are you ready to vaccinate? Well, being a first-time mother, I hadn't done my research, and I love research, but I hadn't done it yet because he was so early. And so I was taken aback, and I told them, I said, well, he's not even supposed to be here yet. Don't you think it's too early? And they reassured me, no, it's not too early. We need to protect him. And of course, I inherently trusted these doctors because they had saved my life as well as our son's life. So I've said okay to the Hep B shot. Unbeknownst to me, instead of just giving him the Hep B shot, they continue to give him 4 additional shots for a total of 5 shots in one 24-hour period. When Gavin was born, he weighed 918 grams. And by this point, he had gained some weight, but he was still an itty bitty baby. So right after the vaccines were administered, he then went from the special care nursery back into the NICU. He started having some complications, and they asked me to leave. I was always sitting by his isolette with him, as much as they would let me. So I left the isolette, and they said, no, you need to leave. So I stepped outside of the screen that they then put around him, and they said, no, you need to leave. And I thought, well, where do I need to go? Why do I need to leave? But I wanted them to be able to do what it was that they were going to do to help our son. So I left then the interior room of the special care nursery, and they said, no, you need to leave. So then I walked out in the hall, and
they didn't
want me anywhere around.
They ultimately threw her out of the hospital.
Yeah. So that was our experience, and we didn't really know what all this meant until much later. Anyway, that's kind of how things started with Gavin. So
do you know the shots that he got? You say he had 5 shots. Do you know what they were?
I could pull it up, but it was Hep B.
MMR.
MMR is at 1 year. Sure. I can certainly pull that up. They were considering these his 2-month shots, right? That's what I find interesting.
Yeah, it was a month before he was actually his original due date.
So what happened to your child after that? What did you see happen?
Well, I mean, he was a micropreemie. We brought him home in the middle of September, closer to his due date. The hospital forgot to send him home with his medications, so there were complications then as well. What I really saw was, though, again, he was born in June. In November, I mean, he had decent eye contact. He would smile. He started, mimicking what we were saying, which was really surprising. He would, do an approximation of, I love you, or he dada, or the cat walked by and her name was Reggie and Edgy. So that was November and seemed to be doing fine. And around about March, we took him off of phenobarbital. Why he was put on phenobarbital, they had told me was for his liver. But the phenobarbital he was put on the day after these vaccines were given. So, of course, that's an anti-seizure medication.
They never told us he was having seizures.
Never told us he had seizures. So when we pulled him off of the phenobarbital in March, when he was 9 months old, all of a sudden, then we started seeing the seizures.
And did you vaccinate him again after that? Or did you know it was the vaccines?
I didn't know it was the vaccines, and I continued to vaccinate. He got his MMR at 1.
And flu shots. The doctor said it was very important because he was compromised, that he had to get flu shots. We were giving him all these shots that they told us to get. And then he was just, one day he was just gone.
Yeah.
It was right after one of the shots. He just disappeared.
We didn't realize the damage that had been done from the vaccines till he was probably around 16 or 17 months. And that's when we really, really knew that there was something wrong. He wasn't crawling yet. He didn't crawl till he was 15 months. He didn't walk till he was 18 months. We expected
7 when he started speaking again?
Yeah, he was 7.
7 years old after we did some treatments with him and some supplements, and he finally started speaking again.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you both, with the amount of stories that I've done, it's actually incredible that your son is even alive.
Yeah. We with all the issues we've gone through, we still realize how blessed we are.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many people we've met along this journey, and a lot of single parents dealing with this, and children that have far worse challenges.
Yes.
And not to compare either, because vaccine injury is vaccine injury, but you know, he was born so small and tiny. And
He was so small. He was so small. He looked like a little old man. When they put him in his isolette, they put a little plastic cover over him to keep him warm. He looked like an action figure, like a Star Wars action figure you'd see hanging in a toy store. He was so tiny.
He was tiny.
Very, very unique look he had. He looked like a little old man.
Yeah.
But they didn't just pump him full of vaccines. They pumped him full of drugs with God knows whatever side effects of that.
Yes. Yes. No, I mean, even doing, the research on all the drugs that they put him on, in the hospital, we've been trying to detoxify from that. So, I mean, Gavin is our true miracle. He's a true miracle that he survived 26 weeks gestation. He's a true miracle that he survived all these affronts of the vaccines. And we have worked so hard, but I will tell you, Gavin has worked so hard.
He's a tough kid.
He's a tough kid. He's so disciplined. I mean, even yesterday, I was talking with one of his therapists, and they're like, well, he reads every ingredient on everything that he's, eating. I'm like, he knows. He absolutely knows. I mean, Halloween, he gives away, his candy, and I'm like, that's going in the trash. But he'll be like, can I have some of it? And I okay like 1 or 2 pieces of decent chocolate, and that's about it. But he understands. And then today at 18 and a half, he's 6'6", and he weighs 132 pounds. But this was a little micro creamy, and we have, it's not lost upon us how blessed we truly are, not just to be his parents, but that he has come so far. Every day I read about parents who their children are still in diapers or who are nonverbal, and I get it, because it took him a long time to get to where he is.
So describe him now at 18 years old. Has the vaccine still got an effect on him?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
talk about his life and what the vaccines have taken from him.
We are his legal guardians. We took guardianship in August of this year. He is, and again, we do all sorts of different therapies, and a lot of it has been through recovery, has been through food, and he's not recovered, but he's functional.
And diet and supplementation were that was the main core of what we did with him, and then we did some hyperbaric treatments and things like that. But it was diet and supplementation.
Yeah, but today he's reading. He likes to do he'll memorize the bones of the body, the muscles of the body. He wants to be a fireman. We just encourage him to not give up on what it is he wants to do. He's incredibly smart, but of course, incredibly vulnerable. He couldn't be, I don't know that I would trust him to cross the street on his own. He's, of course, like typical kids with ASD. He doesn't understand the things that he should be leery of, and he doesn't understand his space in this world. So if we're out in public, he might bump into someone or something, and that sometimes causes a problem. So he definitely needs our protection still, but we are pushing him, and he's pushing himself to become as independent as possible. So what else would you say about?
When was the last time you had a vaccine?
Not since, I believe it was October of 2008 was the last time he had a vaccine. And that's where he lost. He used to sing his alphabet. And that's where he lost he hasn't sung since then. So that was when we were like, oh my gosh. And it just awful.
He was what, 2.5. And that's when the fight started with the doctors. And I have to give the credit to Nancy. She was a pit bull. They did not want to, let him not get injected more, for lack of a better term. And the fights that we had, and keeping them from sticking more poisons into them.
Fights with pediatricians all the time, where we left, a pediatrician went to a different one, and thankfully he understood. Sadly, he had, as a doctor, injured his own son who was not recoverable. So he understood, and we started really understanding that we couldn't inherently trust the doctors that we thought we should trust, that we needed to be his advocate, which is true. And so many parents, I just remember going to get one of his vaccines in his first year of life, and I was driving up to the hospital to his doctor's office, And I heard on AM radio, the news, all these crazy autism moms are out there. Oh, green R vaccines. And I turned it off. I didn't know. So anyway.
Nancy, none of us knew. So you're in good company here. We did the best we could. We trusted. What about your second son? Did you vaccinate your second child?
That's one of the really good things that came out of this.
Yeah.
And
they tried and they tried and they tried.
Yeah, unfortunately, Gavin was almost a sacrificial lamb for his brother. So his brother had very few shots, and we've not only that, but with all the work we did with diet and supplementation with Gavin, we all lived by that. So we how many years were we were gluten-free, casein-free,
7, soy-free,
dairy-free, soy-free, grain-free. Making a pizza was like a whole day event in our house because we had to grind up the cauliflower and start. It was crazy. There's a lot better options now on things like that. But we went so many years with that. Yeah. Our health improved. His younger brother, whether he knew it or not, he
benefited from all of that.
He benefited greatly, but more than anything, he was saved from probably a similar fate because I think they're very similar in some ways. And we both think had he gotten the same shots, he would have ended up in the same spot.
Yeah.
Did his second child go to full term?
No, he went 36 weeks, and of course I had to have the C-section.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, he went 10 weeks longer, so he had that benefit as well. And of course, my attention span at that point for being pregnant was kind of gone because I'd had one at 26 weeks. But we had doctors fighting over that too. That no, every day in the womb is so important. And the doctors they want to schedule the C-sections according to their schedule. They don't want to have a natural childbirth anymore. I didn't have that option with the second one, but I hear about that all the time from other moms saying, mm-hmm. Oh no, they want to schedule the C-section. So there's so much benefit to having a vaginal delivery.
Now your second child had a few vaccines, so he's still vaccinated, if you like. Does he have any of the issues your first child had?
No, he has other issues.
Sometimes we joke that he's the more difficult child, but they're about as opposite as you can get. But thankfully, he doesn't have those those injuries that his brother had. So he's
right. Well, and the reason being is that the doctors were still scaring us into, oh, you're going to be protecting them, and you would see like this very gentle doctor who would come in. I remember even when Gavin was in 6th grade, oh well, it's time to do the meningitis shot, and I'm like, no. And all of a sudden, she became this wicked woman, and I just was like, I'm out of here. I'm never coming back here. This is a child who I've had doctors who would write Gavin letters saying that he had an adverse reaction to vaccines. Please exempt him from any future vaccines. And these doctors would just dismiss this and just the name calling and the way we were treated.
Intimidation.
Total intimidation.
And we all know now, I mean, it's come out now, especially with the pediatricians, a significant portion of their income is based on the percentage of their patients that are fully vaccinated. So I'm sure you guys are all well aware of that, but we didn't know at the time. We just took them for the wellness check, and it just seems like the wellness check is just training them because that's to bring them in and get them shots. So it was a fight, and these kind doctors, some of little old men and very nice women, and they just turned into pit bulls when we said we did, and they brutalized you. I thought you were gonna come to blows a few times.
There were a couple times I think that we were about to. Gavin's brother is incredibly gifted. He has also been the beneficiary of the fact that Gavin had ABA therapists in the house. He doesn't understand at this age, and he's 15. He doesn't understand the benefit that he has derived from the fact that he has a brother with special needs.
Wait, he's 15. He knows everything.
Yeah. That's where we joke and we say he's actually at times more difficult. Gavin is a dream. We have been so blessed with this child who just wants to do right. He's so compliant. Doesn't mean he's not without behaviors, but we do recognize that in the full scheme of things that we're pretty blessed with how well he is doing. It doesn't mean that on a daily basis, I mean, up until he was 5, there was every day I was on the floor crying, and Dave just gave me a figurative slap in the face one day. He goes, "You're not helping him, and you're not helping me.
Not a
and
literal,
You're not helping.
not a literal,
not
slap.
a literal figurative." I said figurative, but and that's where I finally was like, I can't cry every day for what might have been. I can't cry every day for what I feel responsible that I allowed to happen. I can't cry every day for, where he might have been. And it's still every day, you still have those feelings, but you have to push them aside. And I have found that, we just remain optimistic and do everything that we can. And it's constant research that you're always doing to find that one thing that might make a difference in his life, or, to change things for him or for other people. And that's really, what it all has become about, is how can we help other people with Gavin's stories.
And along with that, he's happy. So it's, I think sometimes there's a little loneliness because he has a hard time, building any meaningful relationships, but he's happy. He doesn't know what he lost. We know what he lost. And that's what's hard to deal with sometimes is just seeing that he's.
Well, and what's upsetting too for his younger brother is his younger brother feels like he doesn't have a brother. And he's at the point at 15 where, having a brother is important to him. He sees his friends that have, things that they go do with their brother.
And they're neurotypical.
Yeah.
David and Nancy, you talk about this so well. And what you talk about, it's just, I know you're not on your own, but it's what we're all living with as parents that have the same story as you. So thank you for that, because there are other issues, with the siblings. And the siblings is an untold story that one day someone will tell. Question for you both. Many of the parents like us been traumatized through COVID with the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And then, of course, we watched Bobby Kennedy going through his hearings with, "You're not a doctor, vaccines are safe and effective." It was like post-traumatic stress to us parents, because everything that was thrown at Bobby was what we had thrown at us when we would go to the doctors.
Yes.
Talk us through how you're feeling about what is going on. Do you feel people are waking up? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, they're definitely starting to. We when COVID happened, because we actually ended up getting into the nutrition industry because that became our entire life with our son. So after 3-4 years, we kind of moved into that industry. We've been in it almost 15 years now. When COVID came around, we said, we've seen this before. This is deja vu. This is exactly what they did to our kids, except instead of it happening to a relatively small percentage at the time of children over 50 years, it was happening to everyone all at once, crammed into a couple of years. So it just like what the things we did for Gavin helped our family. The experience we went through really gave us some clarity to go through that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of other people didn't have. So we weren't vaccinated. Obviously we didn't vaccinate the kids. Almost everyone we know, friends, family, coworkers, almost everyone we know was vaccinated. And we were like the crazy vaccine ladies you turned off on the radio, because we would tell them, "Don't get it, it's poison." And then, I talked to someone in the family and say, "Well, I wanted to go on a trip. I had to go on a plane, so I got it." Or I was at the store and they were free, so I got one. And people didn't know, but everyone was lied to. And, I have thoughts on what happened, and I think I'm right, but we don't have to go into why it happened. I don't think it's as important why it happened. It's just people have to understand what happened, and people are waking up. The fact that Bobby just got confirmed. That's a big sign. People are waking up slowly, and we see a lot of segregation, because when we actually ended up bringing out products to help people that got the shots. And that's a big part of our business right now. And there were two camps. There were the people that thought we were crazy because we're anti-vaxxers. And we said, we're not anti-vaxxers. It was poison they put in you. You just have to get your body to get it out. But on the other side of the scale, there were the purebloods. And they said, well, all those people pushing the vaccines, they can all die. They can go to hell. We said, that's not good. What are you going to do if half the country dies? That's not going to be good for anyone. So it's been I think it's been hard on people. I think having to accept, I think there's a lot of guilt, especially if we have a lot of guilt for giving our son vaccines. We didn't know. There's a lot of people that got their kids vaccinated. They didn't know, and they have to accept the fact that it's not their fault, but they have to do something about it. And that is starting to happen. I mean, it took us years. We still, they're, you know, upset that we did it, and with Gavin. And you know, what happened to our son was a crime also. And in fact, when we finally got the stack of medical records, which it fills a binder about this thick.
Oh, that's just for the first 3 years.
Yeah, years after the fact, we're going through that binder, and all the records from the day he got the vaccine for like a week, they're all missing.
They're all missing.
So,
I mean, I saved everything, and then after I realized what had happened, I went back to the hospital and requested records. And that period from August 2nd to August 9th, completely missing.
No records at all.
Nothing at all. You know, we were focused more on his recovery than we were on litigating. And we had a friend's fiance was an attorney. He goes, well, don't worry about it. You have until majority of age +2. So you have till he's 20 for you to litigate this. So we were like, great, you know, we're going to focus on his recovery. So around about age of 12, when I felt that he was doing remarkably well, you know, he was student of the year that all the teachers were voting him for. He was finally functioning so much better, relatively speaking, of course, that I took everything into an attorney. I went to the best attorney here in town. They'd never lost a case, and took it to them. And they, of course, kicked it back. Well, because of 2004 medical malpractice law, you know, we don't feel we can find a sympathetic jury. So I knew it was a blow off. Took a couple months to catch my breath on that, took it back into another attorney, laid everything out for them because I felt that's what I needed to do. And they got back to me 3 months later. They said, you absolutely have a medical malpractice case. And I was just, thank goodness. They said, how old is Gavin? I said, he's 12. They said, you had till he was 10. So it was another kick in the ribs, but, you know, we carry on.
But that, you know, and this is what, you know, everyone deals with those cases. There's so many laws protecting the vaccine manufacturers. It's even if we had proceeded, that's a really hard road. You're talking about COVID. I mean, that's even, they've given them extra immunities. And if you get down to it at the end of the day, they're going to claim that it wasn't them that did it. It was the Department of Defense running it. So they're immune from lawsuits. So it's both crimes, both horrible crimes. The COVID crime, you know, the numbers we've seen, incredible numbers that, you know, over 30 million people now have been killed by the shots and hundreds of millions injured. So it's literally the biggest crime maybe in the history of the planet. And, you know, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be, you know, I think we're going to start seeing more info come out. I think more people are waking up every day. Unfortunately, what we've seen is a lot of the people waking up, they don't wake up until they get, you know, a turbo cancer diagnosis, or someone they know dies, or, you know, someone they know gets really sick. I mean, we know multiple people that died within 48 hours of the shot. And it's, you know, everyone say, well, that's just anecdotal. Well, it's not. If everyone knows a couple people that had that happen to, it's not anecdotal anymore. It's just someone's preventing all that data from being aggregated because they don't want us to look into it.
Well, it's like they say autism is a genetic epidemic. There's no such thing.
Well, it used to be the freezer moms, what they call them?
The refrigerator moms.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, you've been throwing insults at us for years. Well, to both of you, thank you for telling this story. It's criminal what happened to your beautiful child, and we're terribly sorry. But
thank you for having us.
Your son and so many others, they did take one for the team, for everyone to wake up. So to them, we're eternally grateful. So thank you to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Reagan's birthday will be on a Tuesday, so I am done with school on the 17th of December of semester 1.
Okay.
So I have school from December 18th until January 4th on Tuesday.
So you just made that the calendar of December to January. Okay.
I'm off of school for for 2 weeks until 4th. So I'll come back on the 4th. So
Okay.
I'm off, and the next one I'm off on the 17th.
Okay, of January.
A Martin Luther King Jr.
Gavin, turn that into February now.
for my IV, yeah.
IV, okay.
And then turn that into February right now.
Okay, so now this is the calendar of February with, all right.
So Valentine's Day is February 14th on Monday.
Okay.
And then there is no school on the 21st of February.
On the 21st, okay. Is that,
So maybe I'll get my IV by then.
okay, you have your IV on that day, huh?
Yeah, and then March is St. Patrick's Day is on Thursday, and then the first day of spring equinox is the 20th.
Okay.
And I have school for the whole month of March.
And then in April, it's party time, right? You get out of school?
Yeah. I get out of school, which is because Easter is gonna be the 17th of April.
Okay.
And then I'll be out of school on April 8th on Friday.
Okay.
So I'm off of school from the 9th to the 17th.
Okay.
And then May, we'll go all the way to May.
Okay.
So I have school in May until the 20th.
Okay.
My last day of 10th grade school is the 20th of May.
Last day of 10th grade school? Oh my gosh.
So Memorial Day is the 30th. So my birthday will be on my 16th birthday is gonna be on a Wednesday.
We are live.
Okay.
All right, tell everyone your name, please.
My name is Cami Bear.
And this, I love that, Cami Bear.
Oh.
So this is a story about your cousin who was killed by the pertussis vaccination.
That's right.
And one in court.
And one in court.
So there's no discussion here. If you're
No.
listening and you want to have a little argument about this, this has been decided.
Right.
Right, important story. Let's go back and talk us through it.
Okay. So my little cousin Eddie Inman was born on February 11th, 1966. And to my mother's twin sister, it was her first child. Perfectly healthy baby. After his 9-month vaccines, particularly the pertussis vaccine, she took him home and put him in his high chair, and it was immediate that he turned purple and spiked a fever and started shaking. So she took him to the ER, and they said that it was a seizure that he was having, gave him phenobarbital. They continued to vaccinate him, but long story short, he had grand mal seizures daily until he was 12 years old and died during one. She had gone on to have 2 other children, and her youngest child was 1 when he died. And because he was sensitive to noises and things like this, he had tipped over the little baby's high chair at one point, so my aunt had made a decision to put him in a private home for care because she was just concerned about, he couldn't help it. And that's where he died. Shortly after, a few months after she had put him there in that private home for care. Tragic. So she fought this, and it was 13 years later that she won a vaccine injury lawsuit. For pertussis. Yep. Tragic.
So now, of course, we have Tdap and DTaP and all those kinds of things. So the pertussis is not a single shot anymore. It's just snuck in amongst so many more. So in ways could be way more dangerous, way more powerful with those other ones in there. So your story is very important because you're warning the parents with their babies as they go in for these shots.
Right, and it's just so much, and there's so much that people don't understand about the toxins that are in them, right? And the reactions that your babies can have.
No idea. They just trust the white coat doctors.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to add to this story?
Well, I just want to add that, I used to babysit my cousin, and I was a teenager as well. I'm only 3 years older than him. But, it was pretty traumatic. I mean, I remember it because, of course, my aunt explained to me, because you never knew when a seizure was coming. And it was really traumatic. I mean, he had to wear a helmet because he would fall down and just start shaking violently. I remember we had to put something in his mouth. So, yeah, it's traumatic.
What was his name?
His name was Eddie.
So Eddie, you're going to give us a picture of Eddie.
I am.
And we're going to put Eddie on this bus.
Yes.
He's remembered forever.
Forever.
Yeah, I'm truly sorry this happened to your cousin.
I know, I am too. I can't imagine what my aunt went through, So it's just a warning to people to just pay attention and research the ingredients in the vaccine so that you're aware. Don't just take the doctor's word for it. Ask for the vaccine insert. Educate yourself so that you know what you're putting into these precious little people. I mean, I think today they're getting like 78 shots by the time that they're 18 years old, and people aren't even aware of the toxic ingredients in them.
No.
Yeah.
Because they're lied to by the doctors.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Polly.
For telling this story.
You're welcome.
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues PhD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.